We are excited to have a large group of facilitators with us today. Hopefully you can share some things with the rest of the group that will be helpful. I'm going to give people about 4 more minutes to get logged in, get set up and ready to go. We have a lot of fun questions that have come in from you, the facilitators, that we have to cover. We're going to ask for some live questions along the way, and we're going to ask for some facilitation tips as we move forward. So Steve, I see that your hand is raised. If you'll just go ahead and go in the chat section and let me know how I can help you. We will be recording today's session to be able to hand it to those who may have not been able to attend, but would like the information we're going to go through. We have some fun topics to discuss that you guys have handed in. So we want to make sure we get to all of those and get those to the people that have asked them. We're also going to ask, and you can go ahead and submit these now if you have a minute, to have each of you submit a facilitation tip, something that has worked for you in your facilitation along the way, either with Inside Out Coaching or any other facilitation tip you might have. And we'll share those throughout today's session. Let me go ahead and close my Outlook. I apologize for that. So I think, Steve, it looks like you have a question. If you just go to the chat panel and make sure that you send your chat to me in the chat section, I'll make sure that we get your question answered. Let me see, Steve. I've unmuted you. If you want to go ahead and ask your question, feel free to.
Sure. For those of us that are no longer associated with the company, basically retired but still very interested in sustaining Inside Out development certification, how do we go about doing that?
You know what, Steve? I will connect with you after the session. We have a great program called Take Us With You.
Okay.
Or a fast forward program, and so I would love to chat with you about what your options are. So let's definitely connect offline.
Wonderful, thank you.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and mute you again, Steve. Any other questions that we have? We have about 1 more minute before we get started. Again, my name is April Cotter. I will be the moderator for today's session. We have some great experts on our panel today. Great questions that came in from each of you. And then some other tips and tricks that we come across as we have been facilitating these as well as doing certifications along the way. So we are excited to share all of that with you. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Again, welcome to Inside Out Development's Facilitator webinar, Ask the Expert. This is a question and answer panel for our Master Facilitator Senior Consultants within Inside Out. We have asked each of you to submit questions. We've had a lot of great questions come in, and our experts are going to walk through those as well as share some tips and tricks along the way. My name is April Cotter. I am a program manager here at Inside Out Development. I will be moderating today's session, so if you need assistance along the way, don't hesitate to send me a chat, raise your hand, let me know how I can help you. That's my role here. We will ask that all audio is muted throughout the session. If you do have questions along the way, don't hesitate to raise your hand. If you just look at the top left-hand side of the attendee list, you have action icons at the top. There's a hand, there's a question mark. So let us know how we can help you. During the live question section, you can go ahead and unmute your line, or I will unmute your line to ask questions. So raise your hand if you'd like to participate in that, or you can ask a question when we come to that point in the questions section on your panel, and we will go ahead and answer those in that live question section. So we'd like for everybody to go into chat right now and actually share in chat your favorite facilitation tip. What we will be doing is in between questions and answers, we will be giving a facilitation tip that was submitted. So go ahead and go in the chat section and submit your favorite facilitation tip. We know that we have some content expertise on our panel. However, we know we have a lot of expertise around Inside Out coaching as well as facilitation within our group on the line. So we would love for you to share your expertise by going into chat and sharing a facilitation tip. I'd like to now introduce you to our panel. We are lucky enough to have Miss Mary Ausler. She's a senior consultant with Inside Out Development. She has an extensive background owning her own consulting business, utilizing innovative and creative adult learning principles, and she does have a Bachelor's of Science of Education from the University of Northern Colorado. So Mary, I'd like you to open up your camera and give them a little wave. So welcome, Mary. We also have Miss Nancy Q. Smith. She is our Vice President of Professional Services here at Inside Out. She actually works really hard on a lot of customization for Inside Out development clients, works with teams to create strategic approach and solutions. She does have Bachelor of Arts in Communication and Public Relations and a Master's of Communication Studies. So Miss Nancy, we'd love for you to join us on the camera and give them a wave. And our in-house expert, Jerry Johnson, he's a senior consultant again with Inside Out Development. He is a master certified facilitator for Inside Out coaching, Inside Out breakthroughs, as well as Mary. Jerry has facilitated hundreds of Inside Out coaching sessions. He has a multifaceted experience in business as an owner, executive, manager, consultant, and trainer. He has his Bachelor of Arts in Organizational Communications from the big BYU, Brigham Young University Cougars. So welcome, Jerry Johnson. Let's go ahead and have you open your camera and give him a wave. There you go. Thumbs up. Even better. Even better. Well, we are excited to start today with our panel. We are going to open up the very first question to our Jerry Johnson. It's one that came in from you, our facilitators. So Jerry, the question that came in is, the most challenging part of facilitating Inside Out coaching for me is the performance wheel section of focus, fire, and faith. Any tips or thoughts about making it more engaging? So Jerry, I'm going to mute my line and let you unmute your line and take this question. You're muted, Mr. Jerry Johnson. Let me see if I can help you, my friend. Go ahead and click on the stop.
There we go.
There we go. There we go.
Thank you. You know, I think probably one of the things that's really helpful for me to remember around the facilitation of the performance wheel and those 4 key elements is first of all that it's kind of a graphic representation of why we use GROW. GROW is really the tool to help people get and keep that wheel turning. And I think one of the things that that does help me is occasionally when I get the wheel up on the flip chart, I'll just ask a simple question of, share with me some adjectives that describe how you feel when you are in a moment of high performance. You're in the groove, you're in the flow, you know you're nailing it. How does that feel? And as people come up with those adjectives, I'll sometimes just capture them real quick around the wheel on the flip chart. And the first thing that people notice is almost every one of those words can be traced to one of those 4 elements on the wheel. And then it's always fun to make a connect back to the 3 flip chart activity, that 3rd chart and question that says, if I coached more and more effectively, my people would, because the language that comes up to describe those moments of high performance is almost identical to the language that they use to describe the benefit of them coaching more and more effectively. So it's a simple connect of, hey, if we just looked at our role as helping people help themselves get and keep their wheel turning, that's when all that good stuff starts to happen. So that's something that's kind of helped me get my energy as a facilitator, and hopefully kind of pass some of that along around the wheel and those 4 key elements.
Mary or Nancy, do you have anything to add to what Jerry said? Okay. Well, we did have a facilitation tip come in before we do move to the next question. It's around just making sure you're good with silence. So after asking a question in a facilitation situation, be sure you count 7 Mississippi to give people a chance to reflect on their answer and answer before jumping back in with maybe another question, a thought. Just don't be afraid of the silence. Give them time to reflect and answer before you move on. All right. Our next question is for Miss Mary Ausler, and Nancy and Jerry, feel free to jump in on this after Mary is done. The question is, the 4.0 version seems to have removed a lot of the explanation around focus, fire, and faith. Could you explain the background on why this content was removed from the program? You're on mute. Okay. Let me see. Mary, if you click on your panel, sorry about this, you can see the red mute, unmute button. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Let me just be sure. I apologize, everybody. There you go.
Yes, there we go. Thank you. Thank you. I was clicking. So great question. A couple of thoughts. When we went from 3.0 to 4.0, one of the things that we did is we tried to leverage Alan's expertise and knowledge around key content, and especially around the performance wheel. So if you can think about our videos, they come in almost 3 buckets. Some are teaching videos, some are modeling videos, example mala and the alignment, and then some of our videos are illustrations or metaphors. So what we did is we took the teach out of what I will say, the quote, the facilitator guide, and gave Alan all of the heavy lifting. So it wasn't necessarily a removal from the program. We just approached it differently to get the information out to the audience in a different way.
Great. Nancy and Jerry, anything to add? Nope. Okay. Great. Thank you, Mary, for that. Another tip. Go ahead, Jerry.
No, that wasn't me.
Oh, okay. Well, another tip has come in, so I'm going to go ahead and let you know what it is. The next one is, when you sense that you have been talking too much as the facilitator, make sure you ask a question. Give them time to speak. That's a great one. All right, let's move on to our next question. Why does the performance wheel have a focus on top of the circle? Can it be the other F's? And I'm going to have Miss Nancy Q. Smith take this one for us.
Sure. So thank you. Focus, faith, and fire are all absolutely essential. We highlight focus first to illustrate that that is the easiest point of entry for a coach. It's the highest leverage point, and it really is what drives the wheel.
Mary and Jerry, do you have anything to add to that?
No, just that often we hear Alan say that grow is a focusing tool, and so if you just bear in mind that focus is that window that grow is intended to leverage, and that's what helps free people up and their wheels up to do their best work. So it's a conscious thing that we do to highlight focus. Not that it's the most important, as Nancy said, you have to have them all, but that focus lever is the quickest and really kind of across the masses the most common denominator for leaders and managers to use.
Okay. Mary, anything else to add?
The only thing that I would add is it seems to be the most tangible. It's hard to touch people's faith and fire, their energy, their passion, and their belief, but if we are in conversation and we can, quote, focus on a task, a project, something I actually have to do, it's the easiest way to get things moving.
Great.
And I would add to that, thanks, Mary. I think I would add to that if you watch the Mala video and you watch how Alan encourages her focus and narrows her focus and sustains that focus, he learns a lot about her faith, her fire, and her knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really, the bigger benefit is for me to leverage focus and allow people to demonstrate how they do their work in those other key areas.
Great. Any more add, Nancy, Mary, or Jerry, before we move on? You're good? Okay. So we've had a tip come in. Try not to say great question, as it can be perceived as a rating of the question instead of just thanking the participant for the question. Great tip. That's a great tip, Steve, because I think we all get caught in our words sometimes and don't realize exactly what we're saying. So thank you. So our next question, we're going to have Jerry answer this one for us. Why does Alan give so much importance to focus in the nature performance video? Why not faith or fire? Why can't the coach work from faith or fire of the coaching? We did answer this a little bit, but I know Jerry has a lot of passion around this, so we're going to let him take this one.
Well, we really have touched on it, and I think you know, it's, if you've all worked with high performers, you'll know that sometimes they have a lot of fire, a lot of energy, and sometimes the best thing we can do for them is just sit them down and put the oxygen mask on and help them take a minute and a few deep breaths and help them get focused and then get out of their way. It's what I think that what we've learned and what Alan learned is that focus is really the quickest way to reduce the interference, and that frees up people to experience the power and the benefit of the faith and the fire and the knowledge that we all have. And so that's really one of the key learnings that we really hope we share consistently in our sessions, is that, hey, focus is one of the quickest, most efficient ways for a leader to help minimize the interference that impacts people's faith and fire, keeping them from using the knowledge that we hired them for, likely. And so I think there's a lot of reasons, but I think the big learning is focus is the quickest way and one of the most effective ways to reduce interference.
Great. Mary or Nancy, do you have anything to add to that?
If it's okay, I'd like to share what I thought was an amazingly creative way of how a manager has used the performance wheel. After she attended a session, she physically made a copy of it, you know, and just kind of took her workbook and started to sit one-on-one with her direct reports and talked about it in terms of, this is what I learned in class. Help me understand where you are in relationship to focus, faith, and fire. So now from an ongoing perspective, they use the performance wheel to talk to each other around where they're at, if it's a knowledge issue or if it's a faith or fire and or focus issue. And it's pretty, she said, it's been amazing around the kind of the uplift in energy across her team overall.
You know, thanks, Mayor. That triggered a thought too, as you shared that, is if you think about Alan's demonstration video with Mala, as he listens and keeps her focused for 12 minutes, it's amazing how much he learns about her faith, her fire, and her knowledge. And if you think about that, what he learns, that's going to make him a much more effective coach for her in the future as he offers.
And it looks like we may have had a pause from Jerry. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on, unless Nancy, you have anything to add to that comment.
The only thing, Mary, thank you for sharing that story. And what I love about it too is it demonstrates transparency, because our most successful client implementation encourage their leaders to talk about the shift that they're making. What a fantastic public vehicle.
Oh, it was.
Yeah. Okay, let's go ahead and share a tip. So we have a tip around always have personal success stories to tell about your connection to and use of InsideOut. That's a great one. I know that sometimes it helps drive it in when we make sure that we have personal, genuine stories to share. So thank you for sharing that. So our next section goes to Jerry Johnson, and it's a question around a specific question on the GROW worksheet. So the GROW worksheet has a question on the options phase. That's the second question up. And the question is, I often have participants ask about the if others are involved, what might you need to do to get their attention question. Typically, I say if my goal is to redecorate my house, I need to convince my husband that it would be good use of our time and money. If your issue is one that only you are impacted by, then skip the question. Am I interpreting this question correctly? So Jerry, if you'd like to take this one. Let's see, I think you're on mute, Jerry. Might be wrong.
If not, I can jump in if Jerry can't.
Let me see. I think I unmuted you now, Jerry. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. So, I think, I'm sorry, I tried dialing in on my phone, and so I've got it. I think that, sorry.
So April, do you want me to speak to the question while Jerry's getting?
Go ahead.
Okay. So a couple of things relative to that question, because it does come up. We were talking prior to the session. So 80% of the time people are like, I'm not quite sure I understand that question. So a couple of thoughts. One is, as the coach, we need to listen to what they're talking about when we're going down the right-hand side of the worksheet. And as an example, if I'm coaching someone and they're referring to their boss, and when we get to that question, the other involved person is their boss. So what we try and do is coach people to restate the question saying, so what does your boss need to hear, do you think, to pay attention to this? So that's one. Second is, if you're the only one impacted, you do have two options. One, you can absolutely skip it. The second option would be, and I'll often ask, well, what do you need to hear? So you pay attention, and I put them in the place of the other person.
Great. So Jerry, do you have anything to add?
No, I think that's perfect. I apologize for my disconnect there, but nope, I don't. That is one of the trickier questions, and I appreciate Mary's insight.
Nancy, any insight from you, or do we feel like we've covered that one? Okay, great. So we have another tip that has come in. Have participants post responses and walk around the room to place their thoughts. So just something to get a little activity, get a little bit of juice flowing, make sure you're not sitting all the time. I love it. So thank you for that ad.
Great idea.
Yeah, great idea. So now we are going into the live questions section. We do have some questions that have come in, and as we answer them, I'd love for more questions to be added. So if you'll go to the question section on the GoToWebinar panel and go ahead and add your question, we'll get it answered for you. So the first question we have, I am going to have Nancy answer, and it's around, do you have a webinar format for delivery? If so, what does that look like?
So what a great question. And actually, we have begun over the past 3 years, we've had tremendous success with a virtual version of Inside Out coaching. It requires an interactive format, so it's not a one-way format that has breakout rooms associated, but we actually welcome your virtual or live online delivery, and we'd be happy to support you in that. Just enter in chat your question, or reach out to us, and we'd be happy to schedule a preview for you and provide you with coaching support as well as materials so that you can be successful. And I think all of us would agree, feel free to disagree though, Our experiences with the virtual version of Inside Out coaching have been mind-blowing, and it's really fun to be able to do it over time with the same group, so they report back their successes in coaching and applying the Inside Out mindset to their work world. So that's one of the parts that's really fun about it. Happy to help you with it.
You know, Mary, I know you run quite a few of these, and Jerry, you have done a few of these. Any add into this question?
I would just add that I was even more impressed with how effectively the coaching practices were handled virtually, and just a second to the power of having them have some field work assignments in between the sessions, coming back and reporting and sharing successes. That's hard to replace. That's really valuable.
Yeah. Mary?
The only thing that I would add, just to give people some insight, is the platform we use allows us to actually put people in breakout rooms, so they practice their grow, they have their grow skill practice, they have alignment practices, so we're able to really simulate what happens when we are face to face. It's allowed us to, with some companies that are truly so global, we have people from all over the world, which also adds an element of, I almost wanted to say intrigue and interest, that we have this global environment where we are communicating and talking through things and practicing. And April knows it's one of my favorite things to do.
As it is mine as well. So if you wanted more information, please let us know. We are happy to meet you where you are when it comes to your webinar needs with Inside Out Coaching, and we are more than happy to help you out there.
And that also includes, if you don't have your own platform, we have done a lot of supporting you, teaching our facilitators how to facilitate effectively in a virtual format, and then support from a production capacity. So would love to get into that conversation.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. So we have another facilitation tip that has come in. If you sense that a group has a lot of introverts in the room for your participants, do pair sharing amongst them or table sharing instead of a full room share when you debrief videos or answer questions. It just gives them a little bit more comfort level to do a pair share or a table share instead of a large group share. So thank you for that tip. So another live question that has come in, and I'm going to give this one to Jerry Johnson. Can we still use Sudoku in our training?
Clearly, as certified trainers and facilitators, our content is content that we hope you use however it can best benefit and meet the needs of your organization. So I don't know that we would ever say, no, don't use Sudoku. I would simply suggest that we ensure that its placement, and if it's included in IOC, it certainly can help support the notion of accountability. It's a powerful concept, and so I think if it works and it's meeting a need, I would say use it.
Yeah. Most definitely. Yeah, double thumbs up on that for sure. So and Mary and Nancy, any add into that, into Sudoku? Okay, all right. So another facilitation tip that has come in, watch your audience for cues for break times. If you're noticing that people are getting up during your content, no matter where the break really falls in the content, watch for them to give you cues to say it's time to take a break, and go ahead and let them. All right. Another question that has come in our live chat. So they want to know, how do I leverage Grow on the Go? And Mary, I'm going to turn this one to you because I know you have a lot of passion around this.
Okay. So truly love the question. And how I facilitate it is I will pre-populate and post up in the classroom 4 flip charts and have the group go back to their groups that they answered the 4 questions in the beginning of the session. So it looks like this. I have visual aids. So, you know, and what I ask the groups to do is you need to come up with 2 questions. So we're taking what's in the facilitator guide, but we're getting them up and having them come up with the questions that would represent that step in the model. A couple of things in terms of to be aware of, it's not as easy for them to do as you might think. And that often they put a question that really doesn't quite fit at that step in the model. And I would say that for the years now that we've been doing this, the biggest trip up place is in options. They will usually and frequently ask, well, what have you tried? And so what we try and do is get the groups to understand if it's a question about the past, it would be about reality. What are questions that you can put in options, you know, to get people thinking forward? And so then we just quickly debrief in terms of hearing from everyone. And then I ask someone in the group if they're willing to role play with me and model how you can use Grow on the Go, that I'm going to be the coachee. And I come into your office and say, do you have a couple of minutes? I'm really struggling with something and can use some help. I let the participant know that you can use the questions that you and your group just generated. So we're usually pretty close to their chart. And then I also ask someone to grab their phone, or I give them my phone. It's set for stopwatch, and say, I just want you to hit start and stop. And if I take a pause along the way to clarify something, you know, just hit pause. And so we will role play this. And I always have something real that I need to talk through. And afterwards, the coach and I have a quick discussion around what was it like for you? You know, what was easy, what was hard? And frequently they say, it was really hard for me not to just tell you what to do. And I'm like, yes, that would be outside in. And so we really look at inside out. So that's one learning point. The second learning point is about time, because often when in the beginning of the day we ask the question, so why don't we coach more? I know I'm batting 1,000. I don't know about Nancy and Jerry, but somebody says don't have time. And so we talk about, okay, this conversation took about 4.5 minutes. You sat and did a grow set, you know, conversation with someone. So it's a continuum. And it's not so much maybe about you don't have time, you don't maybe have a process to follow. So it really hits home that if I as the coach can stay disciplined and get clarification on their goal, get a sense of reality, ask them what are 3 to 4 ideas you have. So what do you think you want to do? It's more about getting comfortable following a discipline and a model versus running all over the field.
Jerry and Nancy, any add?
Beautiful.
Nancy, anything?
I think we talked about actually getting on the facilitator zone demonstration of that role play, did we not?
Yeah, the discussion was this is something we can actually add onto the facilitator community for you to view as a reminder of how it works. So we as a team are going to work on that over the next few weeks and get something on the facilitator community so that you have a demo just like the 2 demos, Flamingo as well as the feedback demo, so that you have that for your reference as well. All right, any other adds before we move to our next facilitator tip? Okay, so our next facilitator tip is when you start the class, do everything you can to learn the names of your participants. If it's by memory because you're really good at it, which I'm not good at, or using name tense, the more you know the names of your participants, the more you can connect with your audience. So that's a great tip. All right, another live question, and I'm going to hand this one to Jerry Johnson. How does a manager initiate a grow conversation?
You know, that's one of my first experiences when I joined InsideOut. At the time, my vice president was in Dallas, and I was in the Salt Lake office. And we had an hour-long one-on-one every week. And he set up right up front the pattern that 15 to 20 minutes of that hour would be a grow conversation. And then we actually kept a parking lot of issues, as well as having issues come up live. And we would choose. Sometimes they were my issues, sometimes they were his issues, sometimes they were joint issues. And it was just an understanding that we wanted to focus on some certain issues or challenges, and we're going to use grow to do that. So it's I think that there's kind of a once we create this working from an inside out mindset and using the tool grow, it's a really easy transition for a manager to simply suggest, gosh, I think we both would be benefited, or would it be beneficial if the two of us sat down with this issue and just pushed it through the grow process. I think it's a real natural, once we've helped demonstrate and model that the grow is an effective tool, and it doesn't necessarily have to always come from the coachee, but it can be mutual issues that we want to move forward faster on together.
That's great. Mary and Nancy, do you have anything to add?
One thing that I would add is, when facilitating the session, obviously we all want people to leave and start to use the process, either physically using the worksheet and or the framework of grow, to always give the other person, whether it's someone who reports to you, peer, colleague, whatever, a heads up in that. I attended a training session and they shared this very cool problem solving, or this great problem solving model. It's a series of questions. Do you mind if we use it in the conversation? Because if you suddenly just quote spring this on people, they're going to be going, whoa, wait a minute, what is this? Why are you asking me all these questions? And you're taking notes. I mean, they go to, is this going to go in my file? So one is, we really need to explain to people in our sessions that absolutely use it, give people a heads up, otherwise it causes interference. And the second is, if I'm going to initiate it, so let's say I want to initiate a conversation with April, I fill out the topic and the goal and the consequences, and I just share that up front in terms of, so April, can we talk about, my goal is this, and here are the consequences. And so I just take ownership when I'm initiating it to get that top section kind of completed, and then continue on.
Yeah, Mary, thank you. The word that came to my mind as you were sharing is transparency, and I think that's a really powerful approach for any leader to go back and just be transparent. I'm trying to be a better coach. I've come across this process that I've been challenged to test and try using. Are you okay if we give it a shot on this in this conversation, and let's see where we end up.
And April, if it's okay, if I could just add one quick story. Here in Denver, I had someone actually come back to a public session they attended about, now it would be 3 years ago, and they came within the last 6 months, and she used the actual worksheet so much that if she was in a conversation with someone, they would look and go, where's the worksheet? Even though like she'd been using it years and knows the questions, etc. So she learned, it's like, okay, obviously I need to use the worksheet. But they were just all so used to it in terms of, quote, a focus tool, and just being quickly able to talk through things, which I thought was just amazing, that the quote coachee said, well, where's the sheet? So just wanted to
and for that person to be able to leave with a hard copy of all the notes. Yeah,
all the time. Yeah.
Nancy, any add into the question around how to start a manager-initiated grow conversation?
So I think it's important also to recognize we do have a tool around coaching for alignment that's really about the coach's goal. And it's good to think through if something is new to the other person. And I love the existence, or Jerry, the way that you talked about patterning or framing in your already scheduled meetings, how can you create a bigger structure and set expectations around the application of the process itself? One thing that we often forget is that, you know, we focus when we're talking about coaching on Grow being a great focusing tool for our coachees. One of the things we need to acknowledge as leaders is it helps us stay focused as well on using the process and remembering who we're actually serving in those conversations. So you have an array of tools. Another thing not to neglect is if we begin our meetings with check-ins and feedback, stucks as well as complex do differentlys become great opportunities or launch pads for those breakthrough conversations.
Yeah, that's a great ad, Nancy. That's a great call out, because sometimes if we're not careful and we don't prepare, plan, and practice for those manager-initiated conversations when it's necessary, it can throw us off a little bit. So make sure you understand and use the tools and help your participants use the tools that are appropriate at the time as well. So any adds to that before we move on to the next facilitation tip?
I'm good.
Okay, thank you. So the next facilitation tip is people are using their phone throughout the session. Yeah, use it to your advantage. When you go on breaks or take lunch or you're doing skill practices, have them set their timer on their phone so that they know when to be back into the room when they're done with the practice session, and that they are back in touch with the classroom on time. So I like that one a lot. This next question I'm actually going to take myself. We have a question around, can we sit in on a public IOC session? And the answer is absolutely. We want to make sure that you always have a comfort level with your Inside Out coaching. You have the latest and greatest tools that you need, and you've asked all the questions that you need to feel comfortable and confident in your facilitation. So let's go ahead and reach out to your regional director, and we will make sure you get access to attend a public program for your Inside Out coaching brushing up skills. So the next facilitation tip, and Nancy, Mary, or Jared, do you have anything to add to that?
The only thing I would add, April, is always know that then all of us are there afterwards. If you're, keeping notes in terms of, can you talk me through this and the transition and whatever. So we are absolutely there to help and support you during the session and after, and following up after that. I've had a number of people come and they bring their facilitator guide and all their material and sit in the back of the room and kind of track things. And then it's a pretty cool conversation we have after in terms of connecting some of the dots that just weren't there for them.
Right. Happy
I would add that.
Go ahead, Nancy.
Sorry. That just, if we didn't make it clear, that's absolutely no additional charge to you. The other aspect is, I know we say this in our Train the Trainers, but do reach out. If you have a question or a challenge, I think most of us have actually shared our mobile numbers. I've gotten Sunday night text or Sunday night call, help, I'm facilitating Monday morning, and that's all part of it. We're absolutely committed to your success. So don't be shy. When you encounter challenges, reach out and we'd be happy to help.
And I would add, don't be shy to come for an hour or two. If it's the afternoon of the session that you'd like a brush up on, come at noon, join us for lunch and stay for the afternoon. Don't feel compelled that you have to be there all day.
Right. We understand you're all busy, and so however we can meet you where you are and what your needs are, please don't hesitate to let us know. That's what we are here for, especially this group on this expert panel. So we love our clients and want to help you out in any way. So if you have more questions, please continue to add them into the question section. We want to make sure we get them all answered for you. We do have another facilitation tip. When you're in the classroom, instead of walking up to the screen that your presentation is on and pointing at it and getting possibly in the light of the PowerPoint on the screen, use a pointer, a laser pointer, to point out what you are looking for. Also, if you find that your room is actually being distracted by what's on the screen while you're trying to have a conversation or a dialogue, just black out your screen. Most laser pointers and clickers have the option to black out your screen to pull them back into focus in the classroom. So another question from the live audience. And I am going to pass this one on to, let's see, Miss Nancy. What is the ideal way forward in concluding an alignment conversation?
So, great question. So the conclusion of an alignment conversation and way forward, according to your conversation planner, is to move to any point of the coaching for breakthrough process that's appropriate. And you'll note in the demonstration where Alan is speaking with Bijan, and Bijan wanted to talk about or work through that problem right now. And so the next step is not that they try to create their own method for handling that conversation, but they would actually pull out the GROW worksheet and look at that as the goal is to create a plan for the completion, the timely completion of these reports that Bijan is struggling with, and to help him navigate through the challenges that he's having so that he can successfully get those reports in on time. But our specified step, in that case, they would likely require much of that full GROW conversation, although certainly they have each shared a perspective on reality in that initial alignment conversation, but now they're getting more to what does the problem look like? Then in options and way forward, it would become more and more of Bijan's situation. So you already have the roadmap. We just want you to use good judgment about what segments of that breakthrough conversation you're using. You may not need the whole thing. It may be very straightforward. Anything to add, fellow panelists?
I just, as you were sharing that, Nancy, I remember hearing Alan say once, just very simply, he looked at the audience and he said, really, the only reason we coach for alignment is to be able to coach for breakthrough. And so simply put, that's where we want to get people to, and that's why you have an alignment conversation.
Yeah, and alignment can be fast, so fast, can be just instant agreement, or sometimes there's a lot of back and forth and people may need time to process through.
Yep.
The only thing that I would add is when I am facilitating, I physically ask every participant to find their GROW worksheet and really make the point of, so now what Bijan and Alan are doing is this. I don't like leaving it kind of out there as a thought, but to physically have it there. And what Alan's going to probably do is say, Bijan, if anything were possible, what might you do? And just follow the rest of it.
Yeah, I think the language on that, Maris, is they say, well, let's get to it. Well, get to what? Get to GROW for breakthrough.
I'm like, everyone pick this up, wave it at me.
Yeah.
Then what you do.
And then with Bethany, they're going to do that after lunch.
Yes.
Great insight, great add. So another facilitation tip that has come in. When you start your day, establish a series of signals to let people know when it's time to come back from practice, when it's time to silence the room, when it's time to pay attention to what's going on in a certain area, and use those signals throughout the day. When people see that, they'll actually respond quickly. Great tip. It's a quick way, instead of yelling across the room, to get your attention of your participants. So we're going to go back to the questions that were submitted ahead of time. We're going to have Nancy Q. Smith take this one. And the question is, my organization is looking for a change in performance management. How does InsideOut tie into performance management?
So this is a wonderful question. I believe great conversations between manager and team member, or supervisor and employee, whatever your language is, are the heart and soul of effective performance management. And you can make a wholesale shift in performance management, but really that foundation is the conversation. So we have actually many of our clients who have taught us how they have integrated coaching into performance management, and we're also happy to work with you on the front end, because at its core, you're still working with the 3 conversations in the compass. Goal setting is alignment. Check-ins and feedback are your regularly scheduled one-on-one, and then your breakthrough conversations are, fitting into the frame that Jerry had recognized. And we have had such amazing feedback from client organizations that are simply making the change that those one-on-one connects need to be regular, and it's whatever regular makes sense for your organization. Maybe it's monthly, maybe it's every 2 weeks. What's working? Where are you getting stuck? And what might you do differently as really the launch pad into that conversation? And what we have heard is that the one-on-one meetings have been transformed, instead of being a status check or kind of a meandering connection, to be really meaningful dialogue that allows the focus to be future focused. Because I think that's the biggest complaint about traditional performance management, is that there's a lot of labor, hundreds of thousands of hours in a large corporation that are invested in really what is essentially a backward look and not fruitful. And what we want is ongoing dialogue around progress to goals, as well as challenges that people are experiencing, so that they can make their own adjustments and again have this wonderful inside out spirit at its whole. So if you have questions about it, we have expertise. We'd be glad to help you. And you can actually even start the entire process by having this inside out mindset and coaching approach in your organization that will facilitate your change.
So fellow panelists, do you have anything to add to the topic of performance management and in tying in Inside Out?
The only thing that I would add is I think Nancy has some of the deepest understanding I know of anyone around how to link the two. So that's one, because Nancy, that was awesome. And then the only other thought to consider is what happens at times is because there isn't a structure and suddenly we're going to, now I have to meet with you weekly and monthly, and getting past, how's it going? What's going on? Where are you at? But to really get it to, quote, be focused, to keep the performance wheel, to keep the work moving forward in a far more productive way than maybe just a touch base and, so April, what's going on? Bring me up to speed. What are you working on? But to get focus to bring focus to it.
Yeah.
I might also just share quickly that we have a long-term large client who's trained thousands of their leaders or hundreds of their leaders in IOC, who's recently gone through a major shift in their performance management process, and really used as one of the core pieces of that new process the 3 questions, the 3 quick check questions built into the one-on-ones that are now not optional for their leaders. And so I think there clearly is some strong connects if you're taking a hard look at your performance management process.
And it's so simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be complicated.
Right. Well, thank you. So another facilitation tip that has come in. If you're teaching in a classroom, make sure you've removed all of the light colored markers and that you're only using dark colored markers for those that may be colorblind. They cannot see those lighter colors, so make sure you're always using dark colored markers. It's a great tip. So we're going to have Mary take this one. There were questions around how to debrief, open up, utilize the alignment and breakthrough videos. And Mary has done some great things around this in her session. So I'm going to have her walk you through some tips around those videos.
So thank you, April. A couple of things. One, I will assess the level of where the organization or the group is. And what I'd like to do, though, is first talk about alignment, the alignment video. So after we, debrief what Alan talks about in the Teach around prepare, plan, practice, act, because Alan's very clear around, we don't want to get into just creating rebuttals and active listening. So those are two key takeaways that we want people to really hear and get. So I pause the videos, not all the time, but I have strategic places in both alignment and breakthrough where I will pause and point out and either set up what Alan's going to do next and then pause after. Example being in the very beginning when Alan says to Bijan, I have something that I'd like to talk with you about and it concerns you. Bijan reacts, which is human nature. And Alan listens and then says, well, here's what I'd like to do. I would like to share, my perspective and then hear your perspective. And I hit pause and I show the group that's Alan setting and explaining the intent and how he would like the conversation to go. And then I'll usually set the group up in terms of, okay, so now he's going to state what he sees and then turn it over to Bijan. So I really want you to hear the space he gives Bijan to give his perspective and how he paraphrases back. So Bijan gives, all of his reasons, and Alan, and point out that, watch Alan, he took notes. See, it's the most effective way to be able to reiterate back exactly what Bijan said, so we heard it. So that's one key aspect that we can point out to people. And then the second is Alan doesn't go down the rabbit holes that Bijan is digging. One rabbit hole is other people aren't getting me the reports I need. So Alan doesn't say to him, so Bijan, who are these people? Have you talked to them? Why haven't you come to me? Also, Bijan talks about people have been giving me projects, and they've said they're more important. Alan doesn't go down that rabbit hole with them and say, well, what projects? Who? Why are they more important? Why haven't you come to me? Who's been giving you these projects? And so what we're trying to illustrate is let the person empty their glass, get it all out and go, okay, do I understand everything correctly? And he repeats it back to Bijan and then pause it again and go, okay, so now listen how Alan works his way into and takes the conversation to breakthrough, giving Bijan the choice. So you can pause the videos along the way. The balance is not to do it, every few seconds, because then it becomes too just disjointed, that you can illustrate some of the key things, especially, I will say, the active listening and the taking notes. And at times I will do the same thing for breakthrough and stop it after Alan is done with the G section with Mala around goal, reality, especially in options when he repeats back to her. And I will usually always pause it then and go, listen how Alan shares her entire list with her and says, what do you think you would like to do? He's not trying to influence her on what he thinks, but truly, here's what we put up on the flip chart. What do you think? Okay,
great.
No, I like to leverage the videos to help really get people to hear it.
Yeah, I think it's great. Nancy and Jerry, any other tips around that?
So
Well, I would just underscore part of what Mary's demonstrated is how critical it is as facilitators that we know those videos really well. And we know who says what and when it's said, because bless their hearts, this is the first time participants have seen these, and they will misquote people, and they will know they've heard something, but they may not remember exactly who said it when. And so as a facilitator, you just really need to know those videos. And I love, Alan is a master at the reflective listening. If you listen to how he captures in the Mala video and with Bashan, but particularly notice after he repeats back to Bashan, everything Bashan has shared you can visually see the interference go down in Bashan. It's like, yeah, you got it. I mean, it's just, and so to be able to stop the video and kind of point those things out, I think is huge, and really can be beneficial.
Especially critical if you're working with a global audience or an audience for whom English is a second language. So this is another opportunity to really read with the room.
And April, if I can just share one more thought. Yesterday, actually, I facilitated, IOC, and one of the participants, after, I had paused it and showed how Alan actively listened, he admitted to the group, he goes, wow, when I prepare, all I do is prepare my rebuttals. And he's like, are you telling me I shouldn't do that? Yes, we are. But truly, it can be just so illuminating for people.
Yeah, and that note-taking is a great reminder for the coach to paraphrase rather than rebut. Because it's I have heard you, I hear you, have I understood you correctly? That's the intent of that piece, to try to diffuse it.
Yes.
Yeah. Great insights on the alignment and breakthrough video and how to break them down and really get there. Jerry said, in these videos, there's a lot of pieces that if you just watch it once, you can miss. And so great recommendation to make sure as a facilitator, you are familiar, comfortable, and confident in everything about those videos, because there are a lot of great teaching points along the way in all of them. So we are going to take, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Even in the tennis video, you'll hear Alan told Jim to watch the ball. And if you didn't really know it, you wouldn't be able to call them to, no, Alan was saying, what do you notice? Which is very different. Jim picks his focus.
Right. We are going to take one last question. We have about 2 minutes left. And Jerry, I'm going to let you take this one. This is an easy one. So the question is, do you have to ask all of the questions on the Grow Pattern worksheet?
It is an easy one. And I find that people are very open to the idea that, hey, we've made an investment to be here today. Let's make this a valid test. And so I'm going to ask you, for the purposes of the test and the practicing today, to use the questions just the way they are in the sheet, in the order that they are in the sheet, just like we watched Alan do, 30 years the guru. He still follows the questions in the order that they're in. And so, yes, today that's our ask, is that you use the pad and the questions the way it's designed. And I rarely get much pushback.
So Mary,
when we start to dig, I'm sorry.
And I know Mary has an analogy that she uses that I think is really excellent as well.
Yeah.
I use the analogy of a recipe that, often when we are going to follow one, we actually follow it as it is. And we combine the right ingredients when it says, and we just don't throw everything willy-nilly in the bowl. And then after we're like, I think I would use less salt. I think I would use more of this. So that, I think, helps sell it a little bit in terms of just follow the recipe once before you decide to change things.
Yeah. And Nancy?
And that includes adding your own stuff. So, and if you add, it needs to complement the experience, right? Because sometimes we'll want to ask additional questions that are just because we want to know, rather than serving the needs of the coachee.
Yeah.
Right.
I think just real quick, the other piece of this is that sometimes it's not about the person who's at the training. It's about modeling something to their managers that their managers can then duplicate. And this is something that any manager, if they see it done a couple of times, can say, gosh, maybe I can coach after all. So I think there's just a lot of benefit in using the tool the way it's designed.
Well, panel, we are at the top of the hour. We so appreciate everybody's participation today in the question section and the feeding of facilitation tips. We so appreciate you as Inside Out facilitators. We look forward to doing many more of these with you as we grow our facilitator group. We are launching a group for the facilitation teams for our client facilitators called Inspire. And so my hope is that you'll be seeing more about us as support for you and being in service to you, as well as the Inspire initiative that we have within Inside Out. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. We will be sending a recording out to everybody that did register. And please don't hesitate to reach out to us or your regional director if you need anything along the way, questions about how to do anything, facilitation tips, or you just want some insight from your experts. Thanks again for joining, everybody. Thank you, Mary, Nancy, and Jerry, for your expertise on the content. I so appreciate and love spending time with each of you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, April.